I'm going to show you how to do citations in a scholarly writing. Citations are really important. They are the ways that you do all of these things. You prove that what you are saying in your essay has backing, has facts to support it. It's not something that's not possible or doesn't make sense. You've got things to support whatever view it is that you're saying in your essay or your opinion piece or whatever it is that you're writing in a speech. So that's one reason to use citations. Another reason, perhaps even more important, I don't know, they're all equally important. Another reason to cite sources is to say, this is not my thought, it belongs to so-and-so. They came up with this idea. They found this information. They did this study. So citations give proper attribution of the information or the ideas to the people that originally created them. And that's really, really important. In fact, that's part of what we're talking about in all of my humanities and music appreciation classes, is making sure we acknowledge the attribution of things that belong or came from, originate from particular people and are used by other people. Okay. To use information without citing a source and just use it as if it's yours is the academic crime called plagiarism. And that really has been and remains the highest academic crime. The thing that is just like, oh, you should not do that. That is just not acceptable in academia, in universities, in high schools, in scholarly endeavors. We must attribute the knowledge and information and ideas to the people that originated them. Now, that can be a little problematic when you say, oh, but I saw this great quote on Facebook or Meta, I guess. I saw this great quote online, but I don't know who said it. Well, then that means you actually potentially have some more research to do. Sometimes we have to track things back to where they originally came from. It's not enough to just say, oh, my favorite movie star said this, but they were quoting somebody else, but I don't know who it is. So sometimes you actually have to dig in and say, let's see, they said that was by Plato. I'm going to have to do research and find out if Plato actually said this. So it's easy in our accessible media age, where all things are equally accessible to your fingertips at the word Google. Oh, my phone just perked up and said hello. See, the phone even wants to help. It's easy for us to think that all information is equally valuable and that sources don't matter. That here's the information, it doesn't matter where I got it from. But it is absolutely imperative. This is part of the scholarly process. It's also part of the scientific process. It's part of other realms that overlap, like a Venn diagram, that we cite the sources, that we know where ideas and information comes from. Okay, that's my little sermon on that. So what I'm going to show you is how we mechanically, like just how do I do citations in a paper. I'm going to show you two parts to those citations. Part one is going to be what you type in the essay, the citations that happen in the text of your essay. And I've made a little fake essay that I just made up off the top of my head with pretend sources that we're going to pretend are real. The other thing that I will then show you is what happens at the end of your essay or project or writing. And that is the Works Cited page. In some style manuals, it's called bibliography. We're going to show you the things that have to happen in the essay and the things that have to happen at the end. You have to do both. And it's not as easy as cutting and pasting. It's not also as easy as just copying in an auto-cite engine citation. That can be helpful, but it's not always the ultimate answer. In fact, it usually isn't. So stick with me and we're going to sort of get this going. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the pretend essay I wrote. And yesterday was Halloween. I'm writing this right now because I'm out of time to write it. So hey, day after Halloween. So this is an essay that I made up about Halloween music, the kinds of music we hear in movies and stuff for Halloween. Here is my essay about music for Halloween, and this essay is not just an opinion piece, but it's actually got some research in it about Halloween itself and about the music and not opinions, but historical details about Halloween, for example, things like that. So this is an essay that needs to have citations. Even some of the things that I take for granted, like that people would know what Halloween means, what the original word was before it was called Halloween. It was called All Hallows Eve. Now, that might or might not be something that my average reader would know. I have to write as if I'm writing to somebody of my own educational background. So if I'm a first year student writing as a communications major, I would say, okay, there are some things maybe that people would know, but there are other things that maybe they wouldn't yet know that I had to look up. So I might put a citation in about All Hallows Eve. In fact, that's going to be covered by something later in the paragraph. So we should cite what is not obvious information. You say, well, how do you not know that Independence Day is on the 4th of July? Well, if you're not from the United States, you might not know that. Now, is your audience largely people from the United States who are reading it? Can you make an approximation? Some things in a society, a big enough society, maybe you say, well, most people probably know that Independence Day is July 4th. No citation needed. But something that's more specific about, say, Halloween, that it used to also be a festival in a different worship practice called Semen, then that would be something to cite. So you're going to always have this question, should I cite that? Do I have to find a source that has that in it so I can prove that it's true? Yes, sometimes you have to look up stuff that you yourself already know so that you can cite a source to support what you already know, to say, look, I'm not making this up. Other people have discovered this, or other people have stated this as well. So sometimes that's part of citation. When in doubt, cite too much. It's better to say, well, I think I better cite this and I better cite that. To do it too much, especially if you're at the beginning of your college career, the more experience you get, say you move into graduate school, you will develop a kind of rhythm of citation. It will make sense the more you do it. So if this is your first time citing stuff, anything that feels like, ooh, I had to look that up, cite a source. Okay, here's my essay. And it starts off with an introductory paragraph. While we all associate spooky music with the yearly observance of Halloween on October 31st, there are several musical works from the art music tradition that return year after year. This paper explores the inclusion of those works in the modern canon of Halloween music and analyzes specific characteristics that make them especially suited to this yearly attribution. Now, this paper, or this video, is about citation, not about paper writing, but I'm going to point out two things. One, this introductory paragraph tells people what I'm going to discuss in the paper. It tells it cleanly and specifically and no frou-frou. And it also does not start with the phrase, Mozart was born in. I mean, I might put that in at some point if that's relevant to my paper, but let's have a good introductory paragraph that simply tells the reader, this is what the paper's going to be about. It told you everything you needed to know. I'm writing about Halloween. I'm writing about art music, not about popular music. And I'm going to tell you why pieces are included as Halloween music in movies or whatever. And I'm going to actually also say which pieces of music those are. Okay, the other thing I'll mention that's also not about citation, sorry, is that I prefer as a professor to read papers that are double-spaced. Now, you could say, well, you're not writing on my paper anymore. What's wrong with single spacing? Nothing is wrong with single spacing. I won't mark it wrong if you do it. But to my eyes, it's easier for me to read and have room to comment and just see what you're writing if you double space. That, by the way, I'm in Pages right now. In Microsoft Word, it's a similar thing. It's called spacing, and it's double space. Notice also, again, sorry, not about citations, but I'll take the opportunity. Notice that paragraphs, when I'm all double spacing, paragraphs begin with an indent. Okay, that's either 5 spaces. Here, I'll hit return, and I'll start a new paragraph. I'm hitting the tab, stop, and it takes me 5 spaces in. You could also do the same thing by starting your new paragraph and then going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Although you notice that doesn't quite take me over the same amount as the tab does. They just have it formatted slightly different. So, but I would say any word processing program, hit the tab, and you've got a new line. Okay. So paragraphs are indented. That's how we know a paragraph started. I will also say, again, apologies, there's so much to say, that while my heading is centered, my text is left flush. If you look over here at the alignment, this is left flush because right now my cursor is in the body of my text. That means it's lined up with the left margin. If I click up here on the title of my essay, look, it's centered. We want the essay to be left flush. So I had to change this after I got done typing the title. I had to change the alignment. So the justification is what it's called, so that it was left flush. Okay, now I promise I'm going to start talking about citations. Okay, so introductory paragraph, I don't need to cite anything there in this case because there was nothing I looked up that was there. My first real paragraph, the second paragraph, has actually one of the reasons that I would need a citation. It has a direct quote. So one of the ways that I can use other people's information would be to simply cut and paste in what somebody else wrote or what somebody else said or somebody else observed. And that could be, it could be cut and paste, like you literally go to a web page, cut, paste in, or you just are looking at it and you type it in yourself. Okay. Now, if you cut and paste something in from another page, you must do these things. Before we even talk about citation, you must change the font so that it's the same font that you're using in your paper. I'm using the font Helvetica Neue, okay? You might be using Times New Roman or Arial or whatever, but you have to make sure that when you paste something in, you highlight it again and change the font to match whatever the rest of your paper is. The other thing is that sometimes the font size is different. And you have to fix that too. A lot of web pages are done at 13-point font to make them easier to see. So if you paste it in and you realize like, oh, that's at 13, but the rest of my paper is at 11, then highlight it and change the font size. Like I could do it over here in this toolbar in Pages, okay? The other problem with cutting and pasting stuff in from a web source is that sometimes it also actually shows a weird little background highlight. Which you cannot leave in there. There should be no weird little background highlighting in your paper anywhere. That's just not part of the process. So I would say most of the time it's better to simply retype, but then you have to make sure you spell stuff right. Okay, that's fine. Spell stuff right. That's good. Okay. That was a little digression, wasn't it? Back to citation. This direct quote needs a citation. It comes from a book by an author named Butler. And this is actually a book, like an actual book. And so I got it from the library. And so I looked up I found this quote on a particular page. And so now I need to cite this source. And so I'm going to do that right here at the end of the sentence that I borrowed from this author. So the quotes close quotes, and then I do parentheses. Now I'm going to put the author's name, Butler. Unless I have multiple different books or works by Butler, I can just use one name, Butler. That tells the reader, hey, look down at the bottom of this essay, and when you see my works that I used, you'll see the name Butler, and you'll know it's that book, okay? And it was on page 217. End parentheses. That's it. That's the citation. It's a really easy way to do citations, okay? Style formats like APA, MLA, they all use this running in-text parenthetical citation method. It's really great. If you happen to be using Chicago-Turabian, I'll just flip for a second over to a page done in Chicago-Turabian. That would look like this. Here's an essay, and I inserted a footnote by going to Insert, Footnote. And so that just numbers, it puts a little tiny number, a superscript number, and at the bottom of the page, it made me start typing my footnote. I'm not going to go into that right now because most of you will not be using Chicago-Turabian citation style. I love it. For my discipline, we use it a big chunk of the time, so I'm really good at it. But you can use whatever style manual format you wish for the writing you do in my core classes. That's not a problem at all. I'm happy to look at any of those citation formats. So use the one that your major, that your discipline, that you're studying at CSU, use the one that is best. Absolutely. Go ahead and use MLA because that's what your teachers have told you, or use APA. Just pick one and use it. I'm doing a sort of generic one that's sort of an approximation between MLA and APA. So if you're a real stickler for perfection, you'll notice that this is a little less sticklery. But it will get, for those to whom citation is brand new, this is going to help you get the basics of it. Okay, so back to our Halloween essay. We had a direct quote. Cool. If I jump down to this paragraph, it's also useful to remember the pre-Christian festival of Samhain. This paragraph also has a source in it, but I don't see any direct quotes. Now, I didn't directly quote the author DiGiulio. I found her web source, and it's great. And I was like, wow, this is really useful information. She's got a chart about modern Halloween and Celtic Samhain. So I'm going to use this chart, or I want to refer the reader to it, but I don't need to quote anything. There's nothing that she said that's like, oh, I have to word it that way. I can write it in my own words and still give a citation. In fact, it's often better if I write things in my own words instead of quoting people. I'll talk about that more in a minute. Let's look at this citation. So now I have a web page, not a book. This is a web page with an attribution. That is, I know the author of this web page. I could see it on the web page. It said, this is by Jordan DiGiulio. So I'm going to cite the author. In fact, it's actually by two authors. They both have the last name. So again, I go after the sentence that used the information from their page, and that was this last sentence here. And so I'm going to hit a space, parentheses, and now I know there's two authors, and parentheses. Okay? Whoops, I spelled one wrong, and that's why we proofread. So if there's no, if it's a web page, there's no page number. There's no page number on a web page. So all I have to do is say, oh, this is the source that you'll see in my Works Cited page by DiGiulio and DiGiulio. Okay. There's that citation. That's pretty cool. Now, this middle paragraph here, this very short one, really, okay, if you're going to be picky about writing, we should have more than one sentence in a paragraph. But hey, give me a break. This is a fake essay that I just made up 10 minutes ago for this video, so whatever. Okay, this paragraph doesn't have anybody's name in it. I mean, hey, I used DiGiulio's name down here, and I used Butler's name up here, but there's nobody's name here. But it's clear that I'm using information from somebody else's writing. It has been observed that the two categories of saints, da-da-da-da-da. Where was it observed? Where did I see this? Who observed it? I need to show that, like, I'm not making this up out of my head. And I didn't observe it by just, like, sitting on the bus and watching people randomly. So I have a source here as well. It's also a web source. This web source, while it seems to be a strong source, has a lot of useful and documented information, doesn't have a single author or an editor. So because it doesn't have an author, I'm going to have to use the title of the web source. So I start my parentheses, and the web source is Feast Day Catalog. That's the title of the web page. Notice that here and down here with the DiGiulio source, I'm not putting the URL right in my essay. No, 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 no. No clickable links in your essay. Disable those links. You can undo that. Format. Add link, remove link. If I were to add a link, it would give me an option to remove a link. So don't let it stick a clickable link in an essay. No, no, no. We'll talk about that at the bottom of the essay in the Works Cited page. So I have cited a source even when I have totally reworded what was in that source. Like, it talked about the categories of saints, but it used a whole bunch of words that I wasn't sure I knew how to use very well. It stated it in a way that was not quite pointed in the direction that I needed my paragraph to point. The information was useful and it helps me, but like the way the sentence was written, it was complicated to how was I going to say it and make sense in my paragraph. So I reworded it and then I cite. That's the thing. You don't have to use fancy scholarly words when simple words will work. You should not use words that you don't know what they mean. If something has complicated vocabulary that's very specialized, say it was an essay about music and it was talking about a 16th century canon at the 5th with retrograde, and you're like, what? She didn't talk about that in our music appreciation class. Then don't use those words. Don't pretend to knowledge that you don't have. Just word it in a way, express what you can express. Look up more information if that's good. Get help from someone to explain things. That's also really good. But there's no prizes for like who's got the fanciest complicated vocabulary in an essay. I would really much rather read an essay where you're stating stuff that you have run through your own brain and understood and are stating it to me in your essay, even if that means rewording a source. Okay. Boy, that was a lot of preaching at you, I guess, huh? So I have quoted directly with quotation marks and used a source. I have rephrased or paraphrased two other sources. I've used a source that is a print source, like a book with a page number, could be a journal article. I have used online sources. One was an online source that has an attribution, has an author, and the other one is an online source that doesn't have an author. Okay? So that's the first half of citation, is citing the sources right in your essay. So now we're going to go to the next part of citation, which is what is your last page in your essay, a works cited page. Well, it might not always be the last page. If you have an appendix, I don't mean in your body, but in your essay, then that might come after the works cited page. But for now, works cited, last page in your essay, and you know what? I'm really sorry. It doesn't count in a page count. If somebody says a 4-page essay, the works cited page doesn't count as page 4. Rats. So here I am on a new page, and I'm going to type works cited. Now I need this to be centered. This is the title, so I'm going to switch the centering. And let's see, that was on double space before there, because my essay is on double space. So I'm going to hit return. Oh no, it's still centered. Works cited needs to be left flush. So I change the justification to align the text to the left. And I prefer, because I'm a Chicago Tribune person, I prefer single spacing within my entry. If you double space because that's what MLA says, okay, fine. I think it looks silly. But, you know, we can agree to disagree about style manuals. That literally is a case of good academic disagreement. Excuse me. Okay, so now I'm going to cite my 3 sources that I've used, the Butler book, the Feast Day Catalog, and the DiGiulio book, in my works cited. Now here's the thing. I don't put them in this list in the order that I used them. That is not how it happens. Nope, no way. Not in the order that I used them. I cite them in alphabetical order by whatever I put in the citation, the lead off in the citation. It's also called a lemata. Lemata means the leading entry thing, like a dictionary entry. Okay, so I need to alphabetize before I start typing. I need to have all my sources, like maybe on some note cards, heaven forbid, actual note cards, or post-it notes, or whatever you want. And I say, okay, I have to put them in alphabetical order. Butler is the author of the first one. DiGiulio is the author of the second one, because that D comes after B. And then Feast Day Catalog, there was no author, so I have to use the title to alphabetize, so F. So I have a B, I have a D, and I have an F. Okay, now I'm down here, and I'm going to type the citation for the Butler. Now this was a book. Okay, it's by Butler, Eugene, period. If you have an author, it goes last name, comma, first name, period. Now I need the title of the book. Titles of books go in italics, so I've just hit the italicized key. That's the title of the book, and I'm going to unitalicize for my next typing. Okay. Now, the next thing, if you're using a book, this next bit of information is fancy, called the imprint. That means the publisher information. Because for a published print book that's sitting in a library, one of the easiest ways to hunt it down is to know who published it. And also we can see when they published it. How do you know what the imprint of a book is? Well, hang on, I'm going to show you. let me show you how you find the publishing information or the imprint in a print book. One of my favorite print books, Dooley and the Snort Snoot. Wish I had time to read it to you. It doesn't matter whether it's a picture book, a scholarly book, any kind of book. We have inside the book the title page. The title page tells us the title of the book, the author, Jack Kent. In this case, it also tells us quite a bit of the information I need for the imprint. It tells me who the publisher is and where the publisher's office is or closest office or main office is. That's good. I need, for the imprint, the publisher's name, woohoo. I need the place where the publisher's offices exist. This is a sort of throwback to the days when you'd have to write in the mail, send a letter and say, please send me your book. Okay, great. And it needs one more piece of information that's not on this title page. We need the year it was published. How will I find that, Mr. Snort Snoot? The answer is turn the page. On the back of the title page, down here, is the imprint. This is the same information. It's all kind of condensed small. It also has things like the ISBN, like your textbooks, how you would order them online or something like that. That's how you know you're getting the right textbook. This one has the author's name, Jack Kent. It has the location of the reprint of this, because this is actually a reprint by the Weekly Reader Book Club, but it has the original publishing date as well, 1972. Now you say, gosh, is it just those books that have imprints? No, it is not. Any book, I guarantee. I pull off a book off my shelf, and lo and behold, Shakespeare, Much Ado About Nothing. It's by William Shakespeare. When was this edition published? Well, here I am on the title page, Much Ado About Nothing, William Shakespeare, published by Washington Square Press in New York. When? Well, I turn the page over. Much Ado About Nothing, Washington Press edition, 1964. Wow, no wonder this is sort of yellowy and crumbly. So those are the things that are going to go in the imprint, which I'm going to show you on the actual screen. Okay, so that's how you find the imprint, and I'm going to look in this book here, okay, and turn to the table, or to the title page, and go on the back of the title page, and there it says, okay, this was published in the city of St. Louis, and I say the publisher. Okay, that's Augsburg Publishing, and I can just use Augsburg because obviously it's the publisher, so I don't have to write the word publishing. You can if you want to, but why waste time? Comma. Now the year it was published. Okay, there we go. That's it. If this were like the 3rd edition, it would go in there. If it had an editor or something like that, or a translator, maybe it wasn't in English originally and somebody translated it, that information would also go in the imprint, or in the citation on this line. I'm going to just skip over those more complicated situations because there are places that you can look online, as at the Purdue University OWL website, the online writing lab. And also you could ask me, your very teacher, and I would be happy to show you all the more complicated details. So if I do this, which is all the information I need for my book, I'm good. Not a single space, but a double. So I'm just hit return twice. And now I'm ready. There's a reason I'm doing it that way, by the way, and not just leaving it on double space. And I'll show you in a minute. So I'm writing now the DiGiulio source. Okay, there are the 2 authors, Jordan and Enrico, period. And then the title of their web page, I can put that in quotes. We put titles of web pages in quotes, as far as I know. And that page was Celtic. Okay, period. So there it is. That's their web page. If this web page were part of a larger group of pages, like if it was on a university website or something like that, I might add that as the next thing, like in Online Research Expo. Okay, and then I might italicize that. But if it's just like, hey, it's just a standalone web page, then maybe you don't need that. Okay. Then I would put the URL dot holydays dot yeah, let's say .net. Okay, whatever it is. And now my computer's going to make a auto link. Oh, no, it didn't. VW. Oh, I know why, because I didn't type it right. That's why. http:// what did I say? Holy Days Celtic. Okay, and you see that this time it made a hyperlink. It's okay if you leave that as a hyperlink that way in a Works Cited page. It's not a huge deal to me. I hate it when it's in an essay, but I don't mind it when it's in a Works Cited page. That's fine. Notice, though, how unimportant the URL is compared, not unimportant, but how it has other information. I didn't just list the URL. I listed out what I knew about the website. That's key. It's not just the URL, it's the other stuff that you have to type in there. Then I say accessed. I accessed it on October 31st, 2021. That tells you, like, oh, I just looked at this. You'll be able to find this source. Or what if it's a source that I looked at 10 years ago and somebody goes to this address and they're like, that's not there anymore. Then you'd be like, oh, okay. That explains why I can't find it. Okay. I'm going to come back to this citation in just a minute because I want to format it. But first, before I forget what we're doing, we need to cite our final source, the feast day catalog. And this one is another web source. Oops. And so it's a title of a page. And this was in a larger page or a larger group of pages. So I'm going to italicize that larger group, but I've put the web page itself in there. And it didn't have an author or anything like that. If you're in Wikipedia, please, you don't need to put the editors of Wikipedia or the editors of the Encyclopedia Britannica. No. I'll show you how to do one of those in just a second. Feast day catalog and the URL, whoops, I did it again, http:// ELCA resources.org. And, oh, interesting. It didn't make a little hyperlink. I wonder why. Who cares? Maybe it's suspected that I'm making it up like I am. Accessed November 1st, 2021. Okay. Let's say you looked something up in an encyclopedia. For example, I'm going to talk about Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique and March to the Scaffold, and I'm going to talk about it in some detail. So let's say I have words. I can't type the word words, apparently. And it's about Berlioz, and I need to have a citation about Berlioz, and I'm going to get it from the Grove Dictionary. Okay. I would, fortunately, well, okay, it's going to be Berlioz. So there's no author, maybe in an encyclopedia. Maybe I looked it up in Encyclopedia Britannica, where there's no author. There actually would be an author in this one, but I'm going to pretend there isn't. I do a lot of pretending for you guys. Okay, no author. I looked up the word Berlioz, the name, in an encyclopedia. That's what I typed here. Berlioz didn't write this source, but it's a dictionary or encyclopedia entry about him. Okay. And it would have okay, there's my URL and access October 30th. Okay, so I put a lot of online sources in here because that reflects, I think, the change that you all are probably making, which is that a lot of the things you do are going to be online. So this is an encyclopedia entry. There's no author. If there was an author, I would have started it with the author's name. How about that? Yeah. I'm going to show you now a little formatting magic. So notice this Butler thing took up only one line. Woohoo! Didn't go on to a second line. But all the other entries were long enough that they leaked onto a second or third line. Now I need to make what's called a hanging indent. So I'm not going to indent at the first line like a paragraph. Nope, not in Works Cited. I want the first line to stick to the left margin. So I need to indent this second line. Now, I could just start typing spaces, but that's going to get weird. Don't do that. Here's what I'm doing. I'm hitting enter or return. I really did hit enter or return right there next to the word October, and now I hit tab. Wow, it means that this little line is now indented. Big deal. So I go down to the DiGiulio entry. I put my cursor by the T in times, because that's starting this next line. I'm going to hit enter, and I hit tab. Then I can go right down to October. I could hit enter again, but actually I think I can just hit tab. I lie. I can't. I have to hit enter and then tab. You can experiment. Microsoft Word usually lets you just hit tab the second time. So now we have all of the alphabetized things hanging out at the left margin. Notice how nice and clean and easy it is to see them. And all the other stuff is like, yeah, you're important too, but you're not getting in the way of my eyes. And so I need to do that for this one as well. Feast days. Great. So this is my Works Cited page. I'll just close with one other thought about sources. Online sources are certainly great, but you know what's also great? Libraries. Libraries are filled with books. And while you say, oh, what is not online? Everything must be online these days. That's actually not true. In some fields like science, there are a lot of things that have been digitized that used to be in print. Why? Because science usually has better funding than something like the arts. In music, a lot of our sources are still in the print books they were originally published in. They're not all online. Because we just don't yet have the funds and maybe the resources, the people resources to just keep digitizing. We still will. It's going to happen more and more. But don't forget that just going over to a library and looking in a library on the shelves and finding an actual book is not a bad idea. It's not always necessary, but it can be really, really a good way to use it. So don't disdain an actual printed book and having to look stuff up in a printed book. It can be very helpful, just like looking up things online can be. Let's see, what else can I tell you? You can always email me and ask for a Zoom session or just an email session. I'm always happy to look over people's citations, although I can't do it on the day a paper is due because I would get 200 papers and I would not be able to get through them. So if you give me a little lead time, I can usually give a quick glance and tell you what looks funky in citations, if anything. Again, I'll tell you to visit the University of Purdue, their OWL, University of Indiana at Purdue, their OWL website. They have every style manual with examples and how-tos. And the last thing I wanted to say is auto-cite engines, where you type in the citation information or you type in the source, the web source, and they give you a citation. You still have to often reformat them so that they have the same font, that they have the right indenting, they have the right font size, and they don't have that weird little highlighting thing. So sometimes the auto-cite engines, you think it's going to save you time, and I'm not sure it would save you all the time because you might have to retype what you see, but it could help. So yay technology, but also, oh, technology. So you need to just learn how to do this stuff, which is why I made this video. All right, let me know. Questions? I'm here to help.